Hi, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. Folks, you are going to want to stay tuned to my guests, as I always have phenomenal guests on the show, as I bring you phenomenal guests who are wonderful resources that I wish were available when my husband, Matt, was alive. And today is no exception. I'm excited. I love to interview doctors, which is pretty ironic since when I worked as a nurse, I would want to run away from them. And now I love to interview doctors. With me today, very special doctor. I'm so happy that Dr. Brittany Lamb is coming on my show. Dr. Brittany Lamb is an emergency room doctor, and she also is a dementia family caregiver, educator, and advocate. She has a Facebook group, which I highly recommend everyone to check out, to join. It is Medical Decision Making for Your Loved One with Dementia. She is owner of B Lamb, that's Lamb, MD, where she helps people to plan and navigate. Let me backtrack. My brain goes faster than my mouth. She helps caregivers who are caring for those with dementia to plan and navigate medical decisions. And folks, if you've ever been a caregiver, you know how important that is. You know what it's like to go to the emergency room, wait 5 or 6 hours, and your loved one is getting agitated. I will briefly tell a story before I bring on Dr. Lamb. I took Matt, my husband, to emergency room back in 2019 because he had a change of mental status to rule out any infection. I wish I never took Matt. I hope one day there will be a special emergency room just for dementia clients, for those with dementia, for those with any kind of disability, so they don't have to wait 5 or 6 hours. I wanted to get Matt in immediately, but I couldn't. And then I wanted to try to coax him from his wheelchair to the stretcher. They wouldn't let me. They came rushing at Matt, picked him up, and threw him on the stretcher and was agitated. And, of course, had to be medicated and restrained. All, I think, unnecessary, and they would have just handled it differently. But I just wanted to share that. And I want to welcome Dr. Brittany Lamb to Chatting with Betsy.
Hi, Betsy. Thank you for having me. I wish your story wasn't something that sounded somewhat familiar. But I appreciate you having me on today to talk about things.
Oh, you are welcome. It is my pleasure. I really hope to see that. Do you think, because you work in the emergency room, do you think that one day they will have a separate emergency room for those with dementia so they don't have to wait 4 or 5 hours?
Yeah, I think that, gosh, it's a complicated question to answer because honestly, when it comes down to it, it's going to come down to money and whether or not there's money there that can finance that sort of thing. I do think that geriatric accredited emergency departments are going to become more commonplace. And so that will set up people to have better care who are living with dementia in the ER naturally. A dementia-specific ER, I think, is going to be very hard to bring about. But I do think geriatric accredited ERs are coming for sure, 100%. And I do think that the care of people in general in the emergency department will be a lot better with more training of staff. And unfortunately, as the diseases that cause dementia are on the rise, I mean, it's just going to become more and more prevalent. And so, we're going to have to get better at taking care of people because it worries me, people coming into the ER who are living with dementia. Like, I do think a lot of times we cause them harm and their families and caregivers more stress and harm. And that's kind of why I've jumped into the work that I'm doing online, is to try to prevent some of that by giving people more access to information and education ahead of time.
Well, education. I'm all for education and advocacy. Unfortunately, Matt's experience with the emergency room, and I wouldn't have taken him, honestly, Dr. Brittany, if it wasn't for such a change of mental status. And, that both doctors, his neurologist and his primary, said, take him to the emergency room to rule out any infection, as you know, that can make dementia worse.
100%.
And thankfully he didn't have any infection. Then I knew he was, progressing and near the end. But it was such a horrible experience for the both of us. And I have to be honest, I felt such a guilt taking Matt and having him go through that. I mean, they catheterized him to get a urine specimen. I get that. I understand it. Of course, he screamed. And then they left him like half naked and didn't even put his diaper back on. Just the lack of respect and dignity among healthcare workers for people who have dementia or any kind of a disability makes me really angry.
Yeah, and that's normal and reasonable. It's so frustrating to see. I feel like imagine what would have happened if you weren't there. I mean, that's it's very frustrating. I don't see things like that happening where I work as commonly. I think that we have better staffing, but I hear about stories like that all over the country. And, like you mentioned, a change in mental status. A change in mental status is one of the most common reasons I see people living with dementia coming into the emergency department. And I actually wrote a blog post about this. So part of what I do is blog for family caregivers. It's like I try not to write fluffy blog posts. I try to write blogs that actually can make people take action and learn something. But I write this whole process that you can go through to think through, what could be the reason why someone's had a change in their mental status. But infection is 100% something to think about. I do kind of wonder in the future if we may be able to hook people up with services where, someone could give you a kit or come to your home and draw blood or, assess more via telemedicine, and give people better access where they're actually living, because coming to the ER is such a big deal for people living with dementia and their caregivers. But I feel horrible when I hear stories like yours, because I don't know what it feels like to be in that situation as a caregiver, but it makes me very sad.
Yeah, it was bad. And I called up, me, I have a big mouth and I'm an advocate. And a mama bear, so I called up the patient advocate of the hospital, and I complained of how my husband was treated.
I think that's the right thing to do. I mean, honestly, I would encourage people to do that more, honestly. I mean, we have a really hard job in the ER. The staff, is overburdened. We're seeing a ton of patients. It's a very, very hard place to work. But that's, what you're describing is just kind of decency. And maybe that's some more training. Maybe that's some more education about, like, how do we actually interact with people who are living with dementia and their caregivers in the emergency department? How can we make it a little bit easier for them? And so every time something like that gets brought up, like, it is a point in which something could change. Not saying that it always will, but, if you don't try, how do you make a difference? So. Yes,
that's true. And I really hope that in medical school, and I know that you can't, put empathy or compassion into somebody, but I really hope they teach, like, a sensitivity training to medical students, either in pre-med or medical school, for them to, really understand. But I had this thought. I think that any doctor who wants to work with those with dementia should really spend time in a assisted living, a memory care unit, and maybe buddy out with the family. And they can see what it's like 24/7 living with someone with dementia, especially during a full moon, because people might think I'm a little cuckoo, but I'm telling you, I worked as a nurse, and full moons or wild.
Yeah, we share that superstition in the ER too. So I hear you. No, I think that's very wise and very reasonable. I think that in people who do go into geriatrics do get training, maybe not like in people's homes or pairing up with families. I think that's a very interesting idea. And on the medical education side of things, I mean, there is built-in training on, how to deliver bad news and how to talk to people about sensitive topics and how to, we're definitely taught how to physically examine someone so that you're, respecting their dignity and comfort. But, I started medical school in 2010. So, and I'm a relatively new doctor. I've been practicing as an attending for about 6 years now. So, but you do start to, you develop your practice patterns and where you work and the environment that you're in, and you can forget some of those things. And if you're not someone who's naturally as empathetic, it could be a little bit more challenging for you. But I think that those are wonderful ideas. And I do know some people that are working on changing medical education and trying to blow it up a little bit. So I may be able to put a bug in their ear for you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I forgot, folks. I just had to put my disclaimer in before I forget, because I forgot.
Yeah.
The views of the guests may not represent those of the host of the station. Please consult with your primary care physician of any medical issues and any legal matters. Please consult with your attorney. I just wanted to say that before I forgot. Dr. Brittany, you are a wonderful resource, and I love doing my show because I love to tell people about resources and people who can help them. And you are a wonderful, valuable resource that I just want to shout from the rooftops. Can you tell us what your business does as far as helping plan and navigate? Because medical decisions, oh my goodness, I know I don't have to tell you, you're a doctor. But, folks, I'm telling you, I got all the legal paperwork done immediately as soon as I could after Matt was diagnosed, because I wanted him to make decisions. I wanted him, and he was able to. You don't want to wait until you have to get guardianship, because that's costly and that's an extra expense. And I know, Dr. Brittany, that you deal with people, and people don't want to do this. They put their head in the sand, and I say for 4.5 years I've been on Passion World Talk Radio, get your legal documents, get your ducks in a row. And I would like for you to tell the audience what is it you do and why is it important to do that? I want them to hear from someone else.
Yeah. I'm happy to champion what you're saying, Betsy, because it's 100% true. I think that a lot of it is we don't know what we don't know. And when you get handed a diagnosis, a serious diagnosis like a disease causing dementia, it's completely overwhelming and people don't know where to go. I also think that the medical community is kind of struggling to provide people with a pathway to follow, which is why I've kind of jumped into this space. But basically what I've found is that even people who go and do the legal documents like the living will and any healthcare directive, there's still a lot that's missing from it, because there's a lot of lack of education and time that we have from a medical standpoint in educating people about what is likely to happen to their person or to you, if you're diagnosed with dementia and you're earlier on and you can still make your own decisions. So what I decided to do is come online and bridge a gap. So I teach people who are the medical decision maker or going to be involved because they're a family member with medical decision making for the person, the medical issues that are likely to happen due to diseases that cause dementia, and then also what's likely to happen because the person's aging, stroke and heart disease and issues with the lungs and infections and falls and injuries and all these things. The treatment and workup and how we take care of someone is a little bit more complicated in dementia. It can be even more complicated to diagnose the conditions because people can't always tell us what's going on. So I like to teach people all these things and what the treatment options are. And I like to look at people as an individual. But what I decided to do in order to help as many people as I can is I developed a course that family members can go through either as individuals or together as a family to create a medical decision plan for their person based on what they're at risk for. And I basically walk them through all the steps of that. So, but my overall theme and mission in coming online is to teach people that there are 4 pillars of planning when it comes to being a dementia family caregiver. And those are what you talked about. So the legal planning is incredibly important. Having medical and financial power of attorney immediately is key, because once someone loses the ability to make decisions, they cannot legally name their own decision makers. They cannot do that paperwork. Doing a living will, I think, is a good start, but what I teach is way, way more detailed than a living will. So legal planning is one pillar. Financial planning is a pillar. If we don't know how we're going to pay for care, it's like a stressor that hangs over us. And unfortunately, the money situation is it's a reality. So financial planning. Then I talk about mindset and how we take care of ourselves, how we look for resources, how we connect people to different services, what is out there. Try to connect people to things that they need. And then the 4th pillar of planning is medical decision planning, which is that's what I do, and that's what I do in my business. So the main part of my business is really this course that I developed. It's called Make Your Plan with Dr. Lillian. And then I write a blog for people that is free, and I run a Facebook community that's also free to join, where I help answer people's questions, and I do live videos in there to teach different things. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Well, I think that people should definitely join your Facebook group and, get in touch with you about the course. Can you repeat the name of your course again?
Yeah, it's called Make Your Plan with Dr. Lamb.
And
I know.
I like that.
If you Google it, it's there. I'll tell everybody just a little bit more about it. It releases to people. I don't want to overwhelm folks, but it goes out over 8 weeks. So you get one part each week for 8 weeks. Once you buy this program, you never really lose access to it unless for some reason I'm not able to keep it on the internet anymore. And right now it's a one-time fee of $397. And so that's the course. And you can find it. You should be able to find it by Googling it, but you can also find the link to it on my website, which is blammd.com.
And you had mentioned you write blogs. Where can people read those blogs? Because I'll tell you, folks, they are top-notch, full, valuable information.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so those are also on my website. It's blammd.com, and then if you do /blog, everything is there. I'm working on trying to organize them a little bit better, but I think I wrote 20 blog posts in 2022, and that's when I started the blog. I cannot tell you. I mean, I've really loved writing. It is kind of time-consuming. So this year I've kind of slowed down a little bit and just trying to talk more about the blogs I've already written because it is very time-consuming. But I really have enjoyed writing.
Well, you know what? This is funny. You were let me see. You might be about the 5th doctor or 6th that I talked to, that I interviewed, that is writing. I would love to see you write a book. I mean, not that you have time between being you're a doctor, having a family, and doing your side business and writing blogs, but if you ever get the time, I think you could write a very interesting book about about medical decision-making and how important that is, and I could see you doing that in the future.
I appreciate the encouragement. And I just want to say, too, Betsy, that I'm married, but I don't have any children. I am a dog mom.
Okay.
But I don't have any of my own children. I'm a proud aunt. My husband and I are likely not going to have kids. So
okay.
I love spending time with my family, my extended family.
Sorry about that. I don't know why I thought you had kids, but
no, That's one less thing I have on my plate, and I don't want people to think that I'm like superhuman or something.
Well, being a dog mom and, being an aunt, that's family, that takes time. So I could definitely understand that. One was enough for me. At my first one, I said to Matt, you could have another child with someone else. One was so enough. One was enough for me, but I just can't believe, like, the people I talk to, and I tell them, actually 2 people I just recently talked to, they think their spouses might have dementia. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, go get evaluated and go get your legal documents. And they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And, just people, I think they need a lot of guidance and support and encouragement to do this. I know women of a certain age, like when my dad was diagnosed, my mom was like, I can't take your father to a lawyer and get power of attorney because he would get mad and he would think I'm taking something away from him. And I tell people, you're not taking anything away. I told Matt, you're still going to make decisions. This is for when I need it, when you can't make decisions. Mm-hmm. And, if people would just reassure their loved ones, I'm not taking anything away. This is for when I need it.
Yeah.
When you need it. How important. And I tell people the story. When Matt was in the hospice, the hospital, the hospice doctor said to me that starting at age 65, he tells people to start planning end of life and talking about it. And I said, why are you waiting till 65? That should start a whole lot earlier. And I told him, what I do. And he said, keep telling people because they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And that's 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's so important what you do, Dr. Brittany, of educating people. And I know I sound redundant, folks, but education is so important. We plan where we want to go to college, right, or tech school, and when we want to get married or if we want to start a family. Why can't we plan end of life? What do we want our end of life to look like? What are our choices? Excuse me. So important. I told Matt, I want you to decide, do you want a feeding tube? I don't want to have to make that decision. I want you to make it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's very important.
I agree. I think the more communication, the better, because it's very hard to, especially, I know you're a nurse, so obviously you have a lot more medical knowledge, and me as a doctor even, it's very hard to make emotional decisions on behalf of someone that you love. My father had a brain cancer and passed away when he was 52. And, I was in medical school at the time, and it was a lot, I don't know, sometimes I feel like it was a lot easier than living with dementia because it was a very fast journey. But the kind of progression that he had, because it was a brain tumor, looked a lot like a light speed version of like Alzheimer's. And it was hard. It was really still hard to make decisions for him and to decide, when we were going to stop treatment. And he was even very open about what he wanted. And so I think that the more conversations that can happen, you take the burden away from the family a little bit more. You almost give people permission to make those tough choices. And who you choose as your medical decision maker, there should be some thought behind that. I think that it can be like a knee-jerk reaction to choose your spouse, and your spouse may not be the right person. Also, people also should consider like what would happen if something happened to their spouse. Because I've often seen that like the spouse living with dementia is diagnosed, and then they are the medical power of attorney for the person who's now their caregiver. and they forget, oh my gosh, like I have to go and change my medical power of attorney because obviously this person can't make my decisions now. So they're, but I think just naming someone as medical decision maker obviously is very important legally to get those ducks in order. But I also think like being able to have these conversations, like what you're talking about, thinking about kind of end of life, what's important to you, but not just end of life too. It's also like the journey towards as we're aging. Like what gives us life? What gives us quality of life? What gives us purpose and meaning? Like those things are easier to talk about. And I tell people, like, if we can have conversations about, this is what a good day looks like to me, and this is what I want in order to continue to live, and this is what I'm okay if you continue to tell them to prolong my life if I am living with this quality of life. Those are the kinds of conversations that need to be had, because if you can say, my person has good quality of life and they would still want to fight, that's helpful to me as an ER doctor, versus my person has bad quality of life. They would say they have poor quality of life and they wouldn't want to live like that, So I think I just wish there was more just open conversation about like what we love about life and what we want and what's important to us.
Oh, yes, I agree. I think people should discuss, do you want quality over quantity?
Yeah.
Do you want comfort care? Do you want treatment? Do you want to be on a ventilator? How long would you want to be on one? How long would you want life support? And I just think that it's very important to have these conversations. Are they comfortable? No, they're not comfortable.
No.
But it's necessary to have them. And I am so glad that I did have my ducks in a row. My son is 38, but I took Josh a couple of years ago to get power of attorney of him, medical and financial, and for him to do his living will.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got to thinking with COVID, oh my goodness, what happens, God forbid, if he got COVID and had to be on a ventilator? God forbid he's in an accident. I want to have a say. I don't want the state to come in. And Dr. Brittany, and you could verify this, when a child is 18, emergency room doesn't even have to contact the parents, do they? They don't have to tell them anything about that person.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, yes, that is true. If the person is unable to speak for themselves and is, like critically ill, we're going to be looking for family. Like I have to tell you, anytime I have someone who's come into the ER who cannot make their own decisions, it's very clear to me that this person has lost the capacity. I'm looking in the chart for the person I need to call. So, and each state has its own rules for who would be like the default legal decision maker. And it's typically blood related. I mean, if there's a guardian, they would be the first one typically, and then it's like a spouse, and then child, and then I think parents if they're living, and then it kind of goes down from there. So you can still make decisions for someone if they didn't name you as a medical decision maker. However, it gets a lot more complicated when families are not on the same page.
Yes.
When there are multiple family members who want to be involved in decision making and no one was named. Because I'll tell you what happens is if everyone's arguing in the emergency department, then we don't make any decisions and the person gets the most conservative treatment, which is, treatment that prolongs their life. And that's what we do until we can figure out what the decision is going to be, and who legally has the right to make the person's decision. I can't say that that's incredibly common, but that is what would happen.
I also think, Dr. Brittany, that the medical decision maker, they may not agree with their loved one's decisions, and that's okay because you don't have to agree.
Yeah.
I think you have to pick someone who will honor and respect your wishes. That's very important.
100%.
Will they honor and respect your wishes, what you want carried out? I've told this story before, but I think it bears repeating. I am so glad that my brother went to a lawyer. Now, this is really weird. My brother Bradley went to a lawyer in the summer of 2020, and he got his ducks in a row. He was fine then. Then my brother got very ill, and he ended up in the hospital, and he got he had a mitral valve clips put in, and then he had pneumonia and sepsis. His bowel died, and the doctor called us up. We had a family meeting on the phone, and she said that Bradley only has a 10% chance of making it through surgery. If he made it through, he would need a trach, he would need a colostomy, and a feeding tube, 24/7 care. And I said, what does his living will say? And he didn't want that. My mother didn't want him to live like that. We didn't want him to live like that. So as a family, we said, no, Bradley would not want that. I am so glad that my brother did that, and there was no fighting amongst us to honor, his wishes, because, to each his own, but that's not a way to live as far as, in my opinion. And I don't think my brother would have wanted to live that way. So I'm glad that my mother honored, and my brother who had power of attorney honored our brother's, wishes.
Yeah.
And, Dr. Brittany, people think, especially when you're young, right, I'm immortal. I'm going to live forever. Nothing's going to happen to me. And things can change, folks, in the spin of a dime.
Oh,
things change. Be prepared.
Yeah. I know. That's one thing I think COVID kind of shined a light on, is like you were talking about. We saw people who were in their 30s and 40s who were on ventilators and were critically ill, and many of them lost their lives. A lot of them had risk factors for severe disease and, underlying medical issues that put them more at risk, but some didn't. And you're right. You just never know what's going to happen in life. And I think that's part of the reason why I got into this work. Part of it is because I am I do kind of think now I'm a little bit more morbid, like being in the ER. Every day I see people at their worst. I see horrible things happening to people and their families, and it does really give you a healthy respect for life, for death and the inevitability of it, and how I personally would want to have some say over what happens to me, and how I feel like people, if they're given the right information ahead of time in education, we are capable of making informed decisions. We just need more information. And I think that when we're asking people in the moment, like, what do you want? What are we going to do? What's the plan? What are we doing? It's just too overwhelming. And it is hard to have these conversations, but it's harder in the moment to have these conversations. And so, I just love that you're on this, on this path to get this message out, Betsy, because I'll champion you to the end. It's the right thing to do. So.
Thank you. It's so important. And I tell the audience, and like I said, I don't care if I sound redundant. This is so important. I can't even press enough, really, how important it is to do the medical and financial power of attorney, and getting your living will done, making your wishes known. And actually, Dr. Brittany, it's a gift. It's a gift that you give to your family. You're relieving them of making these heart-wrenching decisions. I have another story, a woman that I worked with. Her father was in her 80s. He didn't have a living will. And he was on kidney dialysis, and he had kidney failure, of course, and dialysis wasn't working anymore. So they had to make that heart-wrenching decision of removing the dialysis, of stopping it. And this coworker had tears in her eyes. She goes, I hope we're making the right decision. And she went to her priest, and that's why it's a gift, folks, to have your wishes known. Am I morbid to, when I talk about this? No, I'm not being morbid. I'm being realistic.
Yeah.
This is the part of life.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's true.
dying is a part of life. It's the circle of life. And we need to say how we want to live out our life and what we want. I already told, my son, and I already know what I want. I want quality over quantity. And, to be honest, if I had a terminal cancer that there was, like no hope for at all, I want comfort. I want comfort. Bring on the morphine, my morphine lollipops, and wherever else I could get. I don't want to have the last few weeks of my life getting treatment that's not going to help. That's my opinion. That's my choice. But to each his own.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to goals of care, and so everybody has a goal of care, and your goals of care can change over time. So right now, depending on what condition you're faced with, your goals of care could change too. So that's what I teach people inside of my course, is like how to determine what your person's goal is now. Are we doing everything? Are we doing some things but not all things? Are we focusing on comfort? And then in what situations would that need to change? But I like to teach based on the condition. I like to teach specifics. I like to give people more information so that when they're in the situation and their, family member is on dialysis and now it's not working anymore, like they actually understand that, dialysis is a form of life support. So like this person's life has been prolonged artificially this whole time. And what does quality of life mean to that person? And we've determined these things, so we can feel better and more informed about the decisions that we're making.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Brittany Lamb, for coming on and sharing what you do. You are awesome, and I want to encourage the audience, go on, and the information will be in the blog, so please read the blog, your Facebook group, and to go on your website, which is www.blambmd.com, and I would definitely, folks, highly consider taking Dr. Lamb's course, because this is so informative. I think it would help everyone. And you know what? It's well worth the $397 to become educated and informed. Education makes such a big difference. It does. I know from my own experience. Why not get educated? You spend, I'm going to be very frank here. I'm a New Jersey girl, okay? You spend money at the salon, right, to get hair. What, a highlights and colors is over $200 here in New Jersey anyway. Why not spend money, if you could afford it, on educating yourself so you can be better informed to make decisions and better a caregiver to your loved one? It is so important. I can't impress that enough. Education, folks, is highly important. And what Dr. Lamb has to offer, I think at $397, really, you're getting a physician, okay? A physician teaching you. That is a bargain to me. That's a bargain. And I just love what you do, Dr. Brittany Lamb, and I just think you're wonderful.
Thank you, Betsy. I love what you do, and I'll continue to back you. You just let me know how I can help.
Oh, thank you. Well, you can definitely share the show that you're on.
Absolutely.
And the name of your Facebook group is Medical Decision Making for Your Loved One with Dementia.
Yes.
That's on.
It's on Facebook. Anybody can join. And just I do ask that just make sure you agree to the group rules, or it may like send you out. It may decline you.
Excellent. And also, folks, if you're looking for another type of support group, and Dr. Lamb is in my support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. You don't have to have Alzheimer's. I just named it Kick Alzheimer's Ass movement, because Alzheimer's has affected my family, but it doesn't matter what dementia you have. You could be a caregiver or even not be a caregiver, because I'll tell you what, if you're not a caregiver already, you probably will be one or need one. That's a fact.
Yeah. Yep.
And get the knowledge now. And I just want to thank you again, Dr. Lamb. I know you're a busy woman, and thank you for sharing time with me and my audience. And, folks, you can find all the information that we talked about, the links and about the course, in the blog that Jeannie White, who's station manager, writes. So thank you for writing the blog, Jeannie, producing the show. And I want to thank Lillian Cauldwell, CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, for making this all possible. Thank you for listening and sharing. Folks, if you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, it is for free. It is on Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe and share it with your friends. Chatting with Betsy is to help people, to help you know you're not alone, and to provide resources for you to have a better life and for your loved one to have a better life. And I do it, this is a labor of love, folks. I don't get paid. I do it out of love because I love helping people, and I want to help people. I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to be a caregiver. I've walked that road. It's not easy, I know. And this is why I do what I do, because no one should ever have to walk this journey alone during or after caregiving. And that's a whole nother journey, for sure. And that's what I have to say today, folks. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you can be anything, please be kind, shine your light bright, because if we all did that, it would be a much kinder and brighter world. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Until we chat again, I hope you are all well and safe, and blessings to you all. Bye-bye now.